Remember when you were a kid, staring up at the night sky, dreaming of floating among the stars? For many of us, becoming an astronaut was the ultimate childhood fantasy. The idea of blasting off into space, exploring the unknown, and seeing our blue planet from above captured our imaginations like nothing else. But what does it really take to turn that childhood dream into reality? How do ordinary people transform into the extraordinary explorers we call astronauts? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the intense world of astronaut training. Becoming an astronaut is no small task. It starts with a highly competitive selection process. Space agencies like NASA receive thousands of applications for just a handful of positions. Those lucky few who make it through are called astronaut candidates, or ASCANs for short. But being selected is just the beginning. These candidates then embark on a grueling 2-year basic training program. This is where the real work begins. They dive into a wide range of subjects, from the intricate workings of spacecraft systems to the complexities of orbital mechanics. They study life support systems, payload deployment, Earth observations, and space medicine. But studying is just the beginning. Astronauts need to be in peak physical condition. And for this, they undergo rigorous exercise regimens to strengthen their bodies for the challenges of space. But it's not just about building muscle. They also need to prepare for the effects of microgravity on their bodies. In space, bones lose density and muscles atrophy. To combat this, astronauts spend hours each day exercising, even while in orbit. They use specialized equipment designed to work in zero gravity, ensuring they maintain their strength and bone density during long missions. Space travel isn't just physically demanding, it's also a significant mental challenge. Astronauts spend months in a confined space with a small group of people, far from home and loved ones. This can take a toll on even the most mentally resilient individuals. To prepare for this, astronauts undergo extensive psychological training. They learn techniques for managing stress, resolving conflicts, and maintaining positive group dynamics. They practice living and working in isolated, confined environments for extended periods. One interesting aspect of this training involves simulations in extreme environments on Earth. For example, some astronauts participate in underwater missions that mimic the isolation and confinement of space. These missions, like NASA's NEEMO, NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, can last for weeks at a time. Astronauts live in an underwater habitat, conducting experiments and simulated spacewalks. It's as close as you can get to space while still being on Earth. Now let's talk about the technical side of things. Astronauts need to become experts in operating complex spacecraft systems. This includes everything from navigation and life support systems to scientific equipment for experiments. One crucial skill is learning to pilot the spacecraft. While much of spaceflight is automated these days, astronauts still need to know how to manually control the vehicle if necessary. They spend countless hours in simulators practicing every possible scenario, from routine maneuvers to emergency situations. For missions to the International Space Station, astronauts also need to learn how to operate the station's various systems. The ISS is like a giant orbiting laboratory, packed with cutting-edge scientific equipment. Astronauts need to be able to use this equipment to conduct experiments in areas ranging from biology to physics. But it's not just about operating equipment. Astronauts also need to know how to fix things when they go wrong. In space, you can't just call a repairman if something breaks. Astronauts train extensively in troubleshooting and repairing spacecraft systems. They become part engineer, part handyman, ready to tackle any technical challenge that might arise. One particularly fascinating aspect of technical training is learning to operate robotic systems. Many spacecraft and space stations use robotic arms for tasks like capturing supply vehicles or assisting with spacewalks. Astronauts spend hours practicing with these systems, learning to manipulate objects with millimeter precision in the challenging environment of space. Perhaps one of the most iconic aspects of spaceflight is the spacewalk, or extravehicular activity, EVA. This is when astronauts leave the relative safety of their spacecraft to work in the vacuum of space. It's an incredible experience, but also one of the most dangerous activities an astronaut can undertake. Preparing for spacewalks is a complex process that involves multiple training techniques. One of the primary methods is underwater training. NASA has a massive pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, NBL, which contains full-scale mock-ups of spacecraft modules. Astronauts, wearing spacesuits, are lowered into the pool where the buoyancy of the water simulates the weightlessness of space. In the NBL, astronauts practice the tasks they'll need to perform during actual spacewalks. This might include repairing equipment, installing new modules, or conducting experiments. These training sessions can last for hours, mimicking the duration of real spacewalks. But underwater training isn't perfect. While it simulates weightlessness, it doesn't fully replicate the challenges of working in a vacuum. That's where virtual reality, VR, comes in. NASA and other space agencies are increasingly using VR to supplement traditional training methods. In the virtual reality laboratory, astronauts can practice spacewalks in a fully immersive digital environment. They wear VR headsets and special gloves that provide tactile feedback, allowing them to feel objects they interact with in the virtual world. This technology allows astronauts to practice complex procedures and get a sense of the spatial relationships between different parts of the spacecraft, something that's crucial when working in the disorienting environment of space. Another important aspect of spacewalk training is learning to operate the spacesuit itself. Modern spacesuits are essentially miniature spacecraft with their own life support systems, communication equipment, and propulsion units. Astronauts need to become experts in operating these complex systems, all while performing intricate tasks in a harsh and unforgiving environment. While we often think of astronauts working in the high-tech environment of a spacecraft or space station, they also need to be prepared for more rugged scenarios. What if a spacecraft lands off course, and the crew needs to survive in a remote area while waiting for rescue? This is where survival training comes in. Astronauts undergo intensive survival training in various environments. This might include desert survival training, where they learn to find water, build shelter, and signal for help in arid conditions. They also receive water survival training, learning how to stay afloat in their spacesuits and board life rafts if they land in the ocean. One of the most intense survival training experiences takes place in the wilderness. Astronauts are dropped off in remote forest areas with minimal supplies and must work together to survive for several days. This not only teaches them practical survival skills, but also tests their ability to work as a team under stressful conditions. These scenarios might seem unlikely, but space agencies believe in preparing for every possibility. As launch day approaches, astronaut training becomes increasingly focused on the specific mission at hand. This phase, often called increment-specific training, typically lasts about 18 months. During this time, astronauts drill down into the details of their upcoming mission. They learn about every experiment they'll be conducting, every piece of equipment they'll be using, and every procedure they'll need to follow. They practice their assigned tasks over and over,